Welcome to the FuturePulse podcast, where we dive into the world of innovation and technology. My name is Melica, and I'm the founder and CEO of Skilltorch, which is an AI tech recruitment company that operates across the globe. Today, I have with me Wesley, who is the founder of Media.Monks. Absolute pleasure to have you here, Wesley.
Yeah, happy to be here. Very exciting chat.
Likewise. Well, for those who don't know, tell us a bit more about you and what you do and your story.
Yes, I'm one of the founders of Media.Monks, now Monks. We founded it 24 years and 8 months ago.
Oh, no, that
Um,
long.
I have a great skincare routine, so this is zero filters. Currently, and that really started probably about 3 years ago. There's what we call a race to relevance. There's a massive moment of change in our industry. We believe companies like ourselves can be really valuable to our clients in that change, but it does mean we need to figure out quite a bit of stuff. So I took on the role of chief AI officer, partly to signal the importance of this to our team as a whole, and partly to make sure we're making the right changes internally, but also helping our clients go through their moments of change.
Right. Well, talking about the topic of AI, I feel like for a lot of people, it represents a massive change in the industry. I know when we spoke earlier on this week, we talked about the hype of it, right? Um, Tell me, and I think you mentioned something along the lines of like, it's not necessarily just hype. Tell me a bit more about, your thoughts on it.
Yeah, especially in the current news cycle, there's a lot of I think people that are hoping it's a hype, and that might not necessarily be a wrong thing to hope for.
Mm,
Purely from a technology perspective, I would say we're post-hype cycle. A hype cycle traditionally is 2 years of massive excitement, and then we get very disappointed, and we don't look at the thing we were excited about for a few more years. Last
yeah.
official hype cycle was the metaverse and NFTs. We collectively don't really speak about those things anymore. This really isn't that. The technology is probably progressing at an even higher clip now than it was 12 months ago.
Hmm.
The challenge really is, how do you adopt it at scale? And how do you adapt your own organization, your ways of working to the tech? So I would say the technology is post-hype cycle. Our ability at scale to get value from it is more of a people and process and political problem than we can blame the tech for, so to speak.
Right. And in terms of where you guys are at, I mean, you've gone through several waves of transformation. You guys were a client of mine years and years ago when it was called Mighty High. How do you sort of decide when it's time to pivot versus stay the course?
Yes, we've started calling this Monks 4.0 because this feels like the fourth sort of big version of the company, big changed version of the company. Quite a simple framework. We look at the hype cycle, the trends, sort of the consumer behavior. The question framework is really, is this real or just hype? If it's real, is it really happening right now? Because you can be right about the technology and wrong about the timing. And we came to the conclusion quite quickly that it was yes and yes. Part of that was a little bit of luck because we had a good R&D team that had been in the space for a while. But that opens up a massive moment of intellectual honesty. If it's real and it's really happening right now, what does that mean for a service company in the creative and tech space like ourselves? And that becomes a little existential to think through. But
Mm-hmm.
because of that, I think we are a first and fast mover, right? We've taken it seriously, lots of intellectual honesty, no nostalgia about what we used to do, and in some cases are still doing, versus what we believe we should be doing. So yeah, it's we live in interesting times.
Right. So just going back to the AI piece, and you mentioned your own version. So when the old ChatGPT first landed, so ChatGPT 3, in terms of the relevance around that, how have sort of your answers evolved since? Because obviously ChatGPT has changed so much, and I'm sure your
Yeah, yeah.
views have also changed.
Yes, and I think this it's actually, I think, quite illustrative to look at the ChatGPT 5 launch, because there
Mm,
was a lot of hype preceding it, and then sort of a general disappointment. I actually think it's a very good model. Use it a lot, but I think it starts pointing at a really interesting reality, which is the models will keep getting better in a relatively predictable way. But intelligence alone does not necessarily impact the world around it. And we all know very smart people that maybe don't have that much impact. So just siloed intelligence is amazing, but what's the value of that? And that really is opportunities, I think, for agencies and services companies, is how do you take that intelligence and point it at jobs to be done? Use your subject matter expertise to make sure it does something at a level of quality that previously was only possible by buying services. How do you productize it? How do you use it for your own productivity gains? How do you help your clients speed up their process? There's a lot of, I think, alpha in the fact that we have this magical technology with lots of investment being made
Mm.
available to us in such a flexible way. And so that's really the area of focus for us.
Right. Okay. And with regards to, I mean, everyone has a lot of anxiety about AI, right? Replacing humans. What about you?
We talk a lot about the anxiety and excitement,
Yeah.
and sometimes it's 100% anxiety, and often it's 100% excitement. I think we sort of have to learn to live in that space, and that is at the company level, but I think maybe at a societal level to some extent. If I purely think about it from an industry perspective, if we would have described what is now possible 5 years ago to anybody in the industry, they would have loved it. They were going,
Mm.
"That's amazing! Give me all of those things." And now that it's here, you can see that there's quite a lot of pushback and anxiety and bias against it. So we've been given a magical toy, but are a little bit worried about using it at scale, I think, as an industry.
Right. And how has that sort of the shift in all the technological developments, and also obviously you've pivoted as well? How has that kind of changed the value proposition you give to clients right now?
Yeah, it's we're focused a lot on changing the commercial model. I think that's one of the big sort of elephants in the room. Only being paid for hours is sort of a lose-lose for client and agency. Because if you're paying for hours, then you're really not getting the technological innovation, because
Yeah.
agencies don't have space to invest in that if they're only being paid for the hours of a person. So there's a space where clients are getting more for less, higher levels of quality, but agencies have the space to invest in that innovation. But then you need a different commercial model. So we sort of moved from time and material to talent and machine, more outputs and outcomes. Not every client can buy that, because it's depends on how procurement teams are used to purchasing. But we're working very closely with our big clients to sort of work through that together. I think we have to be. I heard somebody say, success is not nostalgic. We just
Mm.
cannot be nostalgic about how we used to do things, and sort of forcing ourselves to think through what our business would look like if you would start it now has been a really good sort of keep ourselves honest level setter. But yeah, starts with the commercials. I think the amount of things that get made start being less, the amount of things and the time it takes to do things start becoming less of a proxy of the value of the thing. And especially in a space where it'll be easier and easier to get things done or made or created, then the value of what gets created goes down. So it really is what is still important. How does it impact the business? And that to me is actually a role to strive for as an agency. So
Yeah.
I think it brings a lot of opportunity for the right agencies, actually.
That's so. I mean, sitting down a year from now, what does success look like for media monks in this AI-driven world?
It's a good question. I'm going to say growth. I think that there's a lot of discussion around the impacts on top line for agencies. We're
Mm.
seeing a massive amount of new business and pipeline because of what we are helping our clients do, and we're helping them adopt generative AI solutions in the marketing supply chain quickly as a managed service, and we're helping them adapt their organization operations to this sort of era. That feels very relevant, feels very valuable for clients. So for me, if that is true, if that is relevant, we would see growth next year.
Yeah.
I want that growth to not come at to the detriment of the quality and the craft of the work. I think quality and craft is a little bit of a DNA component that we feel heavily, right? So growth by being very technology forward while still being able to show amazing work.
Exciting. And what are you most excited about when it comes to the future that we're at? And what are you anxious about, actually? Let's go back to that.
I
You
think
said you're
that
excited and anxious. What is it, though?
I think the anxious piece is it's never been more difficult to think 2 to 3 years ahead. And I think there are moments where you look at the speed of change and you sort of look at that and go, there's no way for us to plan, right? So it's all light on your feet, hyper agile. And is that the best way to operate always? I think there's a lot of value to it, but the combination of lightness and agility with strategy has worked well for us. So the difficulty of planning a few years ahead, the fact that we are a non-protected services industry, right? There's not a lot of compliance, like there is with finance, there is with legal. I think there's continuous pressure on our whole industry, from marketing to the vendor ecosystem. So we're very much in the sort of canary in the coal mine situation, and some anxiety about what it means for talent, young talent coming into the industry, existing talent. Can they get their enjoyment and their fulfillment from different ways of working that maybe are less about how much time you put into something? So there's a lot of those types of anxieties. The excitement, I love innovation. I love change. I love big moments. I think this is the biggest moment I've seen in our industry since we've meaningfully been a part of it. I would almost say if you're not excited by this moment, then it feels like you're doing that purely because of the bias. Because if you're in this space, your agencies innovate, agencies create, agencies figure stuff out, and there's more to innovate and create and to figure out than ever before, right? So that's the excitement.
Well, thank you so much for jumping on the podcast, Wesley. I suppose last but not least, the last question. When it comes to the hype of artificial intelligence, what advice would you give to leaders to sort of distinguish that from excitement to hype as well?
Yeah, I think we're in a space where the technology is post-hype. The ability to get value from it is where the bubble conversation happens, right? There's all of the investment in this technology gonna deliver the value back. I think that relies less and less on the technology, more and more on organizations, people, commitment, change management, decision making. So as a leader, be a little less critical of the technology and a little more critical about your ability to adopt it at scale, and then answer the hard questions. Right? What does that actually mean? Which we are going through at the moment. I think we're closer to the end of that than the beginning, but yeah, it's different ways of working, different organizational structure, different talent, different team. That's it.
Right. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me on this podcast, Wesley.
Yeah, thank you
Thank
for
you.
the invite. Lots of fun.
Thank you.